Get ready. The beginning of 2022 saw Katanga Canyon enter into its 30th year as one of Alton Towers' 10 themed areas. At this moment in time, the area is one of the oldest operating lands in the park. However, one thing we feel differentiates Katanga Canyon from other long-standing areas like Forbidden Valley is a marquee attraction. For instance, Forbidden Valley opened way back in 1994, with Nemesis as its main attraction. 8 years later, the area received Air, or Galactica as it's known today. Not only does the area include two of the park's main attractions, but it has also seen some decent additions and refurbishments over the years. Unlike Forbidden Valley and many of the other Alton Towers themed areas, Katanga Canyon has not seen much additional love since its opening. In fact, the latest addition to the area was way back in 2009, when Explorer's Pizza and Pasta Buffet opened. Most of the foot traffic that Katanga Canyon gets is most likely from guests who are en route to Wicker Man. To us, it's pretty clear that Alton Towers does not value the area as much as it does others. Moreover, we feel that the space could be used a lot better. In this video, we're going to explore what Alton Towers could potentially replace Katanga Canyon with, and if it's likely to happen in the near future. Before we do though, we would ask you to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy the content, as it really helps us out a lot and motivates us to keep going and make more content. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get into the video. Get ready. An overview of Katanga Canyon. As mentioned, Katanga Canyon opened to the public in 1992. Before this, the area was part of the now defunct Aqualand and its Congo River Rapids attraction. Rather than remove the attraction altogether, Alton Towers instead decided to make it part of the new land. As a result, the Congo River Rapids received a re-theme and the island around it became Katanga Canyon. The area is themed around an African mining village and tries its best to immerse guests by using a blend of theming and props. For example, there's an old abandoned jeep on the riverbank opposite Explorer's Pizza and Pasta Buffet. Although the land does its best to make guests feel as if they have been transported to Africa, in this day and age, it leaves a lot to be desired. As we mentioned before, Katanga Canyon is one of the older themed areas at Alton Towers. However, unlike other areas built in the 90s, it hasn't really seen any major improvements since opening day. At present, the area houses two family attractions, Congo River Rapids and Runaway Mine Train. Congo River Rapids is a standard rapids ride that takes guests on a journey through a less than gentle African river. Having experienced the ride and then comparing it to other rapids rides around the world, we feel it's a little lacking. Firstly, the theming isn't on par with attractions found elsewhere in the park. For example, during the ride, guests are taken through a plain concrete tunnel with no real relevant African theming in sight. As well as this, although the surrounding area is covered with trees, we still can't help but get more of a British vibe than an African one. Secondly, the actual ride experience feels a little bland. Sure, the water can be rough at times and the ride vehicle may spin from one side to the other, but that's really it. There's one notable section of the ride where you're taken through a narrow section of the river surrounded by waterfalls, but that's about it. Moving on to Runaway Mine Train, our feelings are pretty similar. We understand that this is a family coaster, and probably a fan favourite due to the amount of time it's been in the park. However, we still feel it could be improved. Aside from the fact guests are sitting in a mine train car, we think the overall mine train theme is lacking. The majority of the ride takes guests through the area's natural dense forest areas. Aside from this, there's one part of the ride that goes through a dark tunnel, which we're sure is supposed to be mining related. We're aware that an African style mine train coaster may have a different style than one set in the Wild West, for example. On the other hand, when we look at this attraction in detail, we're not quite sure what Alton Towers is going for. What we mean by this is the ride doesn't really feel like it's themed to either Africa or a mine. With that being said, Alton Towers probably missed the mark here in an attempt to create a hybrid of both. Either that, or maybe the ride just hasn't aged well in the eyes of the modern theme park guest. The only positive we can really give Runaway Mine Train is that it's definitely a fun experience for kids and probably families alike. Ironically, we've actually heard some arguments from some sources that one of Katanga Canyon's strong points is its theming. Perhaps this was the case back in the 90s and early 2000s, but in today's day and age, we can't really agree. Maybe this though is in relation to the rest of the park, but even then, we think it's a bit of a stretch. If on the other hand, we're comparing it to similar areas across Europe, then it really doesn't stand up. For example, if we look at similar country-themed areas, such as Fantasia Land's Deep in Africa, or Portaventura's Mexican-themed area, we can clearly see Katanga Canyon is subpar. These other lands mentioned provide rich theming that really give guests a deep sense of immersion. As well as this, it's clear that the lands have been maintained over the years to keep up with the growing standards. Katanga Canyon may have been a decent land at one stage, but as of right now, one of its main uses is to allow guests to pass through on their way to Forbidden Valley or Wicker Man. In our opinion, this is a shame given the potential the area the land occupies could have. What could replace Katanga Canyon? So now, the fun part of the video. The speculation. Alton Towers tends to keep its cards close to its chest when it comes to new additions and ideas. We know this all too well from past secret weapon campaigns, which have left fans chomping at the bit for more information until the actual plans are released. With that being said, we do have a couple of ideas that we think are viable and would be decent additions to the park. Our first idea is a Wicker Man themed area. This may seem like an obvious one to some Alton Towers fans, but we think it's definitely one that makes sense. Wicker Man is the latest Alton Towers secret weapon, or secret weapon number 8, and was opened to the public in 2018. In our opinion, it is by far the best themed attraction in the park and one of the park's key rides. The ride is themed around general pagan lore and the iconic British folk horror movie The Wicker Man. It includes an immersive pre-show to set the mood before the ride takes off. As of right now, Wicker Man sits in Mutiny Bay, a pirate-themed land. Clearly this doesn't fit well with the Wicker Man theme, and with the ride being such a fan favourite, it seems like it would make sense to try and expand the experience. In regards to what kind of attractions a Wicker Man land could house, obviously it will already have the Wicker Man coaster as its main attraction. Aside from this, we think there's a great opportunity to build a dark ride attraction based on the theme that's similar in ride experience to Disneyland's Indiana Jones Adventure or Islands of Adventure, The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man. On top of this, we could definitely see some kind of fire show being part of the land. The Wicker Man coaster was famous for being the first wooden coaster in the world to incorporate fire into its ride experience, so it makes sense that other attractions and shows within the land could also have some kind of fire element to it. We think this idea makes a lot of sense if Alton Towers do decide they want to replace Katanga Canyon, but then again, not everything that makes sense comes to fruition. Our next idea is to have some kind of medieval land. Much of Alton Towers is built around old British folktales. As a result, we think a medieval themed land would fit nicely. What some younger viewers may not be aware of is from 1992 to 2008, Alton Towers did actually have a land themed to this effect called Merry England, now known as Mutiny Bay. The land did leave a lot to be desired, which is probably the reason it was replaced. However, it did have potential. For instance, with medieval themed lands, there's a lot of opportunity to create great attractions, shows, restaurants, not to mention other opportunities to build things around medieval folk legends such as Merlin and King Arthur. Moreover, we think there's a lot of opportunity to create a solid attraction lineup around this theme. We think a dueling coaster could be a great addition, not only to a medieval themed area, but also the park in general. This could be similar to Joris and the Drac at Efteling, except we think Alton Towers would go for a steel coaster over wooden, due to the fact that their most recent marquee attraction Wicker Man is a wooden coaster. With regards to dark rides, we would love to see something similar to Merlin's Quest in Toverland, which for the record is one of our favourite dark rides in Europe and something we feel the UK is really lacking at the moment. As an example of how part of the land could be themed, we can refer back to the now defunct Islands of Adventure land, Merlin Wood. Formerly a big part of the Lost Continent, it was removed to make way for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. The land had a variety of attractions, including its own Dueling Dragons coaster, as well as a Merlin-themed restaurant. We think that this would be a great reference if Alton Towers do decide to go with a medieval-themed land in the future. For our final idea, we have simply to expand and refurbish the existing land. Alton Towers could just expand and improve the existing African mining village theme. When we look at the park as a whole, we generally pinpoint both Katanga Canyon and Gloomy Wood as two of its weaker areas. With that being said, we still think combining these lands could be a very viable option for Alton Towers. Similar to Katanga Canyon, Gloomy Wood is a land which is commonly used as a convenient pathway to Forbidden Valley. Moreover, it only has one attraction, Duel, the Haunted House Strikes Back, which many guests don't view as a must-ride these days. Looking at both areas, we do feel there is more potential in Katanga Canyon, so if the lands were to merge, we think that Alton Towers should keep this theme instead of the gloomy wood theme. When it comes to attractions, we would probably be happy to keep the Runaway mine train coaster, as long as it's refurbished. This would be particularly the case for its theming and ride experience. For instance, something to the same standard of El Diablo Tren de la Mina in Portaventura would be great. The same goes for Congo River Rapids. We think the actual Rapids ride concept works, but elevating it to the standard of something like Popeye and Bluto's bilge wrap barges at Universal's Islands of Adventure would be great. The refurbishment of these two attractions plus a couple of additions could really take this area to the next level. Overall though, for this area to be a real success, it will require a lot of investment, something we're not quite sure Alton Towers will be bet on. Will Katanga Canyon be replaced anytime soon? Judging by the information currently available, we can't see Katanga Canyon being replaced anytime soon. This definitely would not be in the next 5 years anyway. Right now it seems that Alton Towers is putting more of its energy into Secret Weapon 9. Like always, there's not a whole lot of information, but rumours are suggesting that something is being planned for the dark forest area of the park. Most notably, it was noticed that some land had been cleaned just below Rita and 13, potentially giving way for a new attraction. Many fans are speculating that this could mean the end for Rita. The coaster opened in 2005 and is arguably still one of the park's more popular rides. On the other hand, Alton Towers may see the coaster as nearing its expiration date, and therefore want to freshen things up. Regardless though, we feel that the planning of Secret Weapon 9, as well as trying to rebuild attendance after a difficult few years, will take top priority for the park. This means it's probably going to be a while yet before we see any announcement involving Katanga Canyon. We might be wrong on this, but currently there's no indication otherwise. To sum up, we think that Katanga Canyon has had its day in the sun, and almost seems like a filler land at this point. In our opinion, there's a lot of great opportunities for how this area could be used, and we look forward to the day Alton Towers announces some kind of refurbishment or replacement plan. If you enjoyed this video, check out some of our other videos from our What Will Replace series on screen now. That concludes our take on what will replace Alton Towers Katanga Canyon. Now you're ready. Let us know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this subject and if you think the land should be replaced. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already.